K-Wave 6 Radio and our host Kirk Spencer welcome you to our show bringing positive messages to today's world. And now, here's Kirk.
Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is Suzanne Perry of SuzannePerry.com and Love Shouldn't Hurt without the apostrophe. LoveShouldn'tHurt.tv. It's a non-profit organization. Suzanne Perry, if you don't know, is a woman who has gone through 22 years of sexual, physical, you name any kind of abuse you can have in a marriage, and has come out with very wonderful personality, very wonderful sense of humor. The whole bit, she and I have talked in our off-air time, and she is a very wonderful person. And even looking at her picture, she doesn't look like she was ever in any kind of a marriage, happy or otherwise, for 22 years. I commented to her that she looks like she's still only like in her early 30s. It's like, what, she married when she was 12? I don't know. But anyhow, without any further ado, I am going to turn over the mic to Suzanne Perry. But first, tell us something about what that was like and what you're really doing now, if you can. Just start with a summary.
Alrighty. I dated who would be my abuser when I was 17 years old. We have 3 kids, and it didn't start off abusive at all. It started with a lot of charm, which I understand is very typical, and I didn't see it coming. If you want a summary, then I really have to fast forward because 22 years is a big chunk of time, but things just slid down into a nasty, ugly pit, and he peeled, I compare it to peeling layers of an onion away. He peeled away my friends, peeled away my family, peeled away my hopes and dreams and joys and hobbies and all of the things that made me. He took away and destroyed, and then pretty much I was just an ugly, stinky core, and then he would step on it and smash it. So I was at a very low point for a very long time, and almost magically I've taken all of that poop under a lot of pressure, and I came out with a pearl.
Well, that's what they say about, a pearl is nothing but a sand that irritated the animal that hosts it, and they put their mucus around it, and it becomes a pearl, or was a chunk of wood under a lot of pressure becomes a diamond. So, yeah, it's all possible, and you're one of the living examples of that. So, tell us about your, LoveShouldn'tHurt.tv.
It's a nonprofit organization that I originally started back in 2010. And intentionally, it was the first business day of the new decade, so it was January 4th, 2010, and it was a means to, it was a means to unite people using music as a vehicle. And once I had people where I wanted them by putting on these concerts, then I would share my story about being in an abusive marriage. But I called it OP Music House, and nobody knew what the heck it was. So during the first 4 years, I spent talking about other businesses and promoting bands, and then behind that, sharing my story. I don't think I quite had my sea legs on yet. So over that time, I developed some better business relationships. I got a tough skin, so I needed that time to develop. And so today, I've rebranded. It is now called LoveShouldn'tHurt.tv. It's very evident exactly what I'm doing. I do workshops and mentoring. We do support group services and referrals for men and women who have been impacted by domestic violence.
Men and women. I had a cousin. I still have a cousin. Anyway. Oh, God, this was almost a lifetime ago. He was talking about this back in the probably late 60s, early 70s. He was talking about physical abuse from women, and even how some women would even attempt to rape. So, do you have anything or any experience, knowledge, whatever, on that?
Plenty. Yeah, I support a lot of men, and the stigma is even worse because generically society looks to men as the protector of the domicile. They're gonna go out and kill the Tyrannosaurus Rex so that the wife can cook him up, and it's really not that way anymore. We have, believe it or not, evolved. So what happens when the man cannot be the provider? For example, if he loses his job, and these abusive women will be all over him. You can't even take care of your family. You can't even hold a job, and just bash his emotional well-being. And as far as raping men, that is forcing themselves onto them. It could be getting them drunk or getting them under the influence of drugs, and it's taking advantage. It's coercion. And it's forcing. So just because somebody isn't physically larger or more physically powerful does not mean that they can't pull something like that off. It's mind over matter.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just made me laugh when you said mind over matter. There's an old expression that we, some of us use, is if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. But, sorry, it just came to mind. But... But yeah, it's I don't know. I'm thinking about that. Can you go a little bit more into detail about that? Because there's more of a kind of an overview. But have you had any clients that have talked about it? Because I know men will not sit up here and come out, yeah, she raped me. You know?
That's right. Yeah, because I mean, just look at the stigma. I mean, if you go out and say that in public, the different expressions that you'll get, the comments you'll get, I mean, you get further bashed. And so this puts men in a horrible way because it makes them further withdrawn. They bury those feelings, which is the worst thing you can do. And they can't heal because they don't face it. They just bury it, and then the ugliness grows within them. So it's a horrible place to be in. And yeah, it happens a lot. And as far as domestic violence, the numbers, it's 1 in 4 women, but it's 1 in 6 men. Every 6 men, or 1 out of 6. But this could happen at various stages of their lives. So this could have happened as a young boy that maybe they were sexually assaulted. I mean, I've got a very close friend. He was walking home from school and somebody pulled over, put him in a predicament, and some sexual things happened there. And he never told anybody up until his adult life. So he has, he's got horrible anxiety. He has very, very depressed. Suicidal ideation. You don't know if something happened that provoked it. What invited this man to approach him? It just invites a whole host of questions about yourself, and you wonder, did I deserve this? And you don't know where to go with it from there. So it's horrible. It's horrible for anybody to go through. But as a man, because of the way society looks at a man as physically larger, physically stronger, should be the protector, and is usually the perpetrator. When they're the victim, it's so much harder to come forth, and it's hard to get law officials to believe you. There's a lot of work to be done.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever done any kind of statistical study on how many, what I was trying to say here is how many people have had sexual abuse as a child in the world, or even as an adult? Have you ever done anything along those lines?
No, statistics are not my forte. So when I need to get stats, I go to statisticians. But I mean, I do field work. I don't have like numbers compiled, but it's a lot more than you think. And actually, I should know, and I don't, so I apologize. But because it does overlap. Like I do work a lot with a lot of people who have depression and who have entertained suicide, and a lot of that stems from abuse as a child. So this is very prevalent. And when I'm going to move into a reason why people stay in a relationship, they will tell me they're staying in it for the children. And here's where this comes together. When you expose a child to a domestic violent household, this child will grow up with anxiety, depression, hopelessness, helplessness, because they're going to have thought, I should be able to help. Let's say it's the mother who's getting beat up. I should be able to help. I should be able to step in. There should be something I can do. And sometimes if they do try to intervene, they get hurt as well. And it could be really devastating. Here are two people who are supposed to be your role models, providing loving and nurturing, supposed to. But instead, they're hurting each other. And when you try to stand up, you get hurt too. So those feelings of confusion are troubling and overwhelming. And again, it's the deep seed of darkness that just grows inside. And then what happens is they don't know what healthy looks like. So now it's time for them to start to date, and they don't know what to do. They're going to copy what they've seen. Well, when I want something, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to get angry and demand it from you. Or I'm going to get aggressive until you act the way I want you to act to make me feel like I matter.
Yeah, that's something I see a lot, even anywhere. Is just that people want to have their way, so they'll find a way to do it, even to the point where they, as you're saying, being aggressive, being domineering, and I'm going to have it my way. And yeah, I kind of turn it the other way. It's like, oh, okay, you don't want it? Fine. I do it by myself. Which, that irritates a lot of people too.
Right.
But I have a friend in England who is actually fighting this fight for domestic violence against kids. And they also seem to have an issue over in England where they are taking children and forcing adoptions to other people, which is causing a lot of sexual abuse to the children. Now, it seems to be there, and I'm hearing rumblings of that in the United States as well, and probably even Canada, is just taking children away from their parents because you've done something that the government doesn't like, so they're taking children and sending them off to someplace else. And this seems to be, I would almost say a pandemic, but let's just say it's an epidemic. Do you see that to be an issue with kids these days? I know you haven't been in this business, if you want to call it a business or activism, for a long time, and I know you don't have the statistics, and as you say, you're the one who's being proactive, not sitting up here just writing up reports and sharing the reports all the time. So actually, saludos for you. But here's the question I really want to ask with that. In a depressive household, which we can see is more prevalent these days because of the economic situation of the world and so on and so forth, do you see more of these kind of abuses coming into play?
Well, I think the number of it really has not changed in my educated opinion. I think what has changed is, thanks to modern technology, we now can expose the issues happening instead of, in the 40s and 50s, dad would come home, beat the crap out of his kid, beat his wife, and it's just too bad. You're too scared to run. No one's going to listen to you. There's no real help for you anyway, so you just dealt with it. So here we are a couple generations later. Well, my dad did this to me, and I came out all right, so now I'm going to do it to my child. And that's all wrong. It's all wrong. Again, it's just saying you behave how I want you to, or I'm going to be forceful to hurt you. So I don't think that's changed. I mean, maybe it's getting a little bit better. Sex trafficking, that's huge. That's just tremendously huge. Now, the whole thing that you've mentioned with taking kids from homes and putting them in adoption agencies, those are just huge manufacturers of children for sex. You're absolutely right, and that is horrific. I don't have stats on that, but that's huge. I think that there should be more counseling intervention going on with families, biological families, or what have you. I don't think it should just be, what if somebody spanked their child, the child went and told the authorities, and they're like, pluck, that's it, go to an adoption home, and now they're going to be a sex slave and traded. That's not the answer here. We need to, nip this in the bud. It starts with prevention. But for those who are already in it and active and having issues, we need to intervene. So pull it apart. Put the cards on the table. Find where the holes are and who's being disserviced. These children need service. They need help. Not just whisk them away. They need to know that it wasn't their fault. because that's the biggest thing. Little kids are killing themselves because they don't understand. They would rather die than to be abused again. They need those coping mechanisms and to be removed from the abuse. And then the ones who are dishing out the abuse, they really need to be dealt with. I personally don't think there's any reform, and you can look at the stats on this. Pedophilia, they don't heal. You can lock them up for 99 years. When they come out, they're going to go to a playground. They're going to go near a school. There is no reform for those. And I'm starting to think, I do think that the same applies for men and women who are narcissistic psychopaths. I don't see any reform. I see no hope. There's one PhD out there. Her name is Jeannie King. She has glimmers of hope for abusers to heal, but I do know batterers intervention doesn't work. It usually just makes them more mad, or if they get incarcerated, there's no treatment going on, and they come out more angry, and they're more apt to kill the person who put them in jail. So there's a lot of dangerous situations that are not being resolved, and they're not being worked through.
Very interesting. We're going to have to continue that just after this first break of ours, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back with Suzanne Perry.
Hi, this is Dr. Nick Leroy, and you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with its host, Kirk Spencer. I'm a holistic physician. I specialize in women's health, breast thermography, the alternative treatment of cervical dysplasia, and gastrointestinal disorders. And you can find me at drnick.net.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com. And you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
This is Belinda Farrell from Find Your Friggin' Joy at www.hunahealing.com, and you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hello and welcome back. Today again my guest is Suzanne Perry. I'm just going to talk about her nonprofit site, which is loveshouldn'thurt.tk. Excuse me, .tv. TK is mine. Yeah, anyhow. Before we left on the break, we were talking about a lot of things about sexual abuse, but I want to come back to a question, and I'm going to let Suzanne run with it after that, which is, we see that governments can't be trusted. In other words, if they're the ones who's taking your children out and helping the sex traffic trade, so we can't trust the governments to do this, so they're just kind of watching you almost like a police. They're looking for the bad things you do so they can take something away. So what do you offer as a solution? Do you have any ideas for a solution for such practices as we're experiencing globally, actually? Well, you can think about it if you wanted.
Well, it's a little difficult to talk about government because it changes from, region to country to continent. I can only speak pretty much for the United States, and even more on a local level. I'm in Buffalo, New York. The politics here. I mean, let's not even talk about our sport teams, but the politics here are so horribly backwards. They don't. You know what happens when you go into court, and let's say it's me and I'm the victim, and I'm scared already. I have to go to court. I need to get an order of protection and all these things that I need to help me to be safe and to live, maybe to protect my children. It's not easy, and we have to jump through hurdles, and the funding for all the domestic violence agencies keeps getting cut, and then hours are reduced, so I might only have a short window of time to get an order of protection, and all of a sudden now the office is closed an hour early, so I've missed that opportunity. I might have to get home. I might have to go home and get beaten. I might get killed. I might not make it tomorrow. So there's, the way that the government toys with its people and funding and all that stuff, I don't see any any end in sight. I don't know how to combat that. Just to do, what I'm doing in my corner of the world and reach it out around the globe is, we got to start somewhere. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was kind of wondering if you had anything that's in play, that circumvents the problem, okay, and still keeps you people. Huh?
Prevention through education, teaching at a young age, self-respect. I don't think any of this is rocket science. Morals, values and morals. But it's because it's generational. This is what they've grown up witnessing. So we got to break that cycle. However, we need to tap into it, whether it be through our schools. I mean, obviously it has to be through our schools, because regular families nowadays are single parent, they're low income, there's a lot of drugs involved. The government puts people on drugs, they keep them watered down and dumb. I'm very opinionated about that, because the people who come to me for help, they're on prescription drugs. They need one to keep them calm because they're a nervous wreck, and then one to keep them awake because they're still on sleeping pills, and they're all bent out of whack. So when somebody comes to me for help, the first thing I do is I tell them to get the heck off of those drugs, and then they feel like $1 million, and they're way easier to be able to work with then, because they're not all backwards. Their chemicals aren't all imbalanced anymore.
That is a subject I'd love to talk to you about, so I'm going to give you an invitation to come back for another show.
Wonderful.
But in the meantime, let's get into another aspect that we were talking about off air, which is, tell us about your own history.
Okay, well, like I mentioned, I started dating who would be my abuser when I was 17. And it wasn't like we went on a date and I got punched in the face. It was not that obvious. He was very charming, and I have recently learned, this is like new information for myself that's come to the surface. I was raised with both parents, with no fighting, with no alcohol. I'd say probably like a lower middle class family. My dad worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And it was just myself and an older sister. And it was a good upbringing. So a lot of times people will think, that I came from abuse because I landed in an abuser's arms. And for me, no, it wasn't. But I was picked on by bullies up the street. Later in life, when I was high school times, like I never got picked to go to the dance or the prom. I was a really ugly kid. I know people don't like when I say that, but I was a really ugly duckling. And I'm funky looking. So on paper or whatever it is, I am Caucasian. But I have an olive complexion, I have green eyes, and I have dark brown curly hair. So and I've got full lips and a flat nose. So people did not know how to categorize me. So they would avoid me. So that was horrible, horrible, horrible. And I didn't really take it to my parents to ask for, to be counseled. I didn't know. I didn't do anything about it. But I distinctly remember when I was 5 years old and I was riding my little red 2-wheeler bicycle up the road, and people said, "Oh, look, here come the little nigger." And I was like, oh my God. I rode my bike home in tears. I'm like, Mom, this is what they said. And my mom said, you go back and you tell them, when's the last time you saw one of those with green eyes? Well, I don't think that was the right answer, and I didn't do it. I didn't go back and confront them, and I didn't tell my mom the next time I got picked on. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned, I was omitted. Like I wasn't in the cliques, which I found to be good, but I didn't fit in. Mm-hmm. I always had 1 or 2 best friends, which is good. So overall, I was happy-go-lucky, friendly, outgoing, and a little outspoken, good sense of humor. So, but I guess I was the perfect target because I was self-conscious about my looks. So once I started dating this person, and we got to know each other, and I started to let on to my Achilles heel. My weaknesses, that was fine and dandy, but that's exactly his point of entry. So now he would sweep me away. Oh, you're beautiful, you're exotic, you're this and this, and I want to show you off, and blah, blah, blah. Wow, right? So that's music to my ears, so now I'm convinced that we're soulmates because that's what he told me, and I believed it. And this is how I fell in. And so soon after, he started to say, why are you hanging out with people like that? They're no good. And he didn't even know who they were. And then he started to pick on my family. He's like, oh, your dad's a tightwad, and your mom, oh, she was a whore. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? What? Where is this coming from? And it's not like I would go to my mom and ask. I felt too out of place to do that. And so I just didn't do anything about it. And so this, stayed inside, and it just rubbed me the wrong way, but I didn't do anything about it. And before I knew it, he started hitting me. But the first one was, that was an accident. It was accidental. It was a reaction, and I'm sorry. But now over time, it started to become, worse. When I was 20, I had my first child. We had our first child, and I was starting to get beat up. When the child was 6 months old, I left for the first time. I stayed gone for 6 months, and then I ended up going back. Now everyone out there, they're going, oh, you're so stupid. Why would you go back to that? And the reasons that, I'm not just speaking for myself, but the reasons that we go back are because by the time we realize, we poke our head up above water and look around, we're up the creek without a paddle. We're isolated. We're alone. We now have lost our friends and our family. We have no social support. There's nobody to reach out to help us understand what the heck happened and what to do about it. Rather, our abuser knows everything. They know what pushes our buttons. They know what makes us feel good. They know what to avoid at the right times. And they say all the right things. They'll make themselves cry. They'll threaten suicide. They will claim to go to a counselor if they ever do it again. All of those things, plus, I want to be a family man. I know what I did wrong. I don't want to be alone. I need you. I want to be a family. All the things I wanted to hear. So I went back. We decided to give our firstborn a playmate. So I became pregnant. And when I was 7 months pregnant, I remember he took my paycheck, he took my car, and he went to the strip club, blew all my paycheck, got smashed, came home, beat me to a pulp. And I'm 7 months pregnant, and we have a 1-year-old. I wait until he finally passes out on the kitchen floor, and it was about 3 a.m. I took our 1-year-old, and I walked about 3 miles, 7 months pregnant. And I went to his parents' house, and I knocked on the door, and my face is all swollen, and I was all disheveled, and I said, this is what your son did to me. I didn't know how else to reach for help, so I figured this will take care of it. Go to his parents. Well, they acted like they were shocked, although I really don't think that they were, because I think they went through it themselves. I think this was a cycle. But they were like, oh my God, So, of course, I didn't tell them everything, but just enough. Like this particular incident. I didn't talk about other incidents. I downplayed it. Don't ask me why, but I did. So,
it's understandable.
He woke up the next morning, he called, and I heard them say, yeah, she's here. And, they had a talk with him, and they had a talk with me, and they said that it's bad and it's wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And so I went back home with him, and we went then to, you go through, it's a honeymoon phase. There's actually phases, and that was the honeymoon phase. So after, the explosion phase, and I got the daylights beat out of me, then everything's all nice, and you get flowers, and you get dinner, and everything's beautiful, and everything's fantastic, and that is the good hormones that you want to hang on to, the good experiences, the wonder, the love. What you think is love, that is why you go back, because you remember that is the good, and you want to be able to live that all the time. So they give you that. It's almost like a drug, and then they cut you short. And it turns into then the tension building stage, and they get nitpicky, and little things come up. But now that I've left, now that comes under scrutiny. What did you do while you left me? How dare you leave me? Were you out sleeping around during the time you were gone? And now, since they weren't there to monitor you, they're going to pick anything, make stuff up, and then beat you up for it. And that's exactly what happened. So then I had left again. I stayed with my parents, and then I didn't have a place to go. I did have a job, though. I always had a job. I always had a job, and I always had a car. And I went back again. So the typical cycle is that people will cycle through 7 times. The number is 7. 7 times they either stay gone and stay out of it for the final time, or they're killed. For me, it was 3. I left 3 times, came back 3 times, and then I married him. By that time, I think I just wrote everything off. I was so brainwashed, I disconnected from my mother for 10 years. She was not there to see the birth of our youngest child, and she was not invited to our wedding. And me and my mom were always close, so that it was, but he turned me so cold that I was seeing through his negative, twisted, tunnel vision eyes. I turned cold. And it was a horrible place to be in for a long time. I was not myself at all. My sister compared us to a cult. And it was just like our little doing. And everybody was very uncomfortable around us. And it was just never smooth and never friendly. It was always cold. So my mother, like I said, wasn't invited to our wedding. And then finally, at the age of 16, our daughter, who's the middle child, she took me aside one morning and she says, "Ma, I can't take living like this anymore. It's either him or me." And she threatened to run away. And that was my bottoming out. Everybody has to have a bottoming out before they change. They got to hit that point, rock bottom. When she threatened to run away, that was my rock bottom. I knew I must do something. I can't let her run away. How the heck am I going to do this? And I was petrified. I shook. But I also agreed. And I said, "You're right." We made a pact right then and there. I said, the next time it happens, as long as I have enough evidence that you can call 911. And I have a reason for saying that. About a year prior to this conversation, when I was at work and I had a break, I called the police and I just said, "Look, this is what's going on. What can be done?" And they told me that in New York State, I could have a black eye and nothing could be done. Too bad. But if I got kicked with a shoe, then the shoe would constitute a weapon and then an arrest could be made. So was I supposed to go home and beg my husband to kick me with his work boot? It was just, it really just doused my last spark of hope. And I think that was it. I sunk in to almost a depression. But still, I was a different person at work. When I was at work, I was happy and thoughtful, and I came up with all the business plans, and I always did well at work. But then I would dread to go home. So within 2 weeks of my daughter confronting me, that did happen. I made sure I had enough evidence before I told her to call 911. And he actually did kick me with his work boot that night, although I didn't ask for it, but it did happen. And the Buffalo police came to the door, and this was like a Thursday night, like 11:30 at night, and all the lights were off, just the TV was on. And they come to the front door, and I open the door and go back against to the far wall, back to the wall. And he's sitting close to the door on the couch with a can of beer in front of him. He was a chronic alcoholic. He still is. And they said, we heard there was a disturbance here. And my husband, very, very calmly, said, "No, there's no disturbance here. I'm just having a beer with my wife. Tell him, honey." And he turned to me, and oh my God, my heart was like pounding on my ribcage. I thought I was going to die. I was like almost on the verge of an anxiety attack. I said nothing. I froze. The police shined his light on my husband and down on the can of beer and across the room to where I was standing, and I had blood coming down from my mouth and blood on my shirt, and I had bright red handprints around my throat. And they shined the flashlight back on him and they said, "Come on, you're coming with us." And they took him and they held him for overnight. And the kids and I, we now have all 3 kids, so the kids and I, we slept for 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks. We just slept. And then we started our life over. And it was really hard because I was never allowed to have personal time with my own children. Every breath was monitored. He had to stand over us with every conversation. So my kids, I think, pretty much just knew me as Mom the doormat. I could never stand up for them because I would get beaten. I mean, I tried, but it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And they could not stand up for me So we were all, even though we were a house together, we were torn apart and isolated from each other. When I was gone at work, he would slave drive them around the house, scrub the floor, go get me a beer, do this, do that. And he would even tell our kids. I remember he told our daughter, "You're fat, you move like a slug." Why? Or he said to her, "I'm going to make sure you never get your driver's license." Who the heck does that? Why would you as a dad insist that you don't want your child to be successful? And you're telling her that you're going to be her obstacle. I just don't get it. And he told our son, he'd point at him right in his face and say, "You suck for a son." How heartbreaking.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you right there. I let you run a little bit over because the story is very interesting. But we have to take our second break. We're going to come back. I have a question for her, then we're going to let her roll some more. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Suzanne Perry.
Hi, this is Lisa Avebury, and I am with Sacred Introvert Retreat Tours. We're heading off to Glastonbury this May, and we hope you'll join us. So check it out, sacredintrovert.com. And I'm at K-Wave 6 Radio, and I'm feeling super honored and blessed to be here. Have a beautiful day.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1. And I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Do you need a website or a webmaster for your business or hobby? A wordsmith for a research paper, or for a script, an article, or for a language translator? Do you need an audio or visual project created or edited? Contact K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk for all your website, writing, audio, and visual needs. Our rates are competitive and our services are excellent. That's K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk. Or email us at info@kwave6productions.tk.
Hi, this is Ben Davidson of the Suspicious Observers, and you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
And welcome back. Again, my guest is Suzanne Perry. We're continuing on. Suzanne has been giving us in the last segment of the show her experiences with her abuse, which she's smiling, laughing about, but I'm listening to it and I'm going, oh my God. So, but let me ask actually two questions, and just to start out the segment, then you can run with it from there. Was his family anything like him? Was one of the parents more dominant, or were both of them very dominant in trying to control him?
He was the oldest of three, and the parents were together, and the father was, he was a line worker for the automotive industry. So he would work as the family supporter, typical, I guess, alpha male, go to work, come home, drink himself silly, and let the women pick up after him. So that is the model that he followed. I do know he got beaten a couple times by his father, but I don't think it was a regular occurrence. But I definitely, because the way that all three of those siblings turned out, there's definitely more going on. So if there was a bunch of abuse, it did not come to my ears. I guess the mother had said that something happened to her once, and I think that most in the profession know if somebody says it happened once, it really happened a lot more. So yeah, I do believe there was a pattern. That was what he was raised in, and so he's mimicking what he knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works in my family. I guess it'll work it worked in my parents' family. It works in my family when I get married. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to let you run after this one. Can you talk about fear and silence?
Ooh, yeah. Fear, yeah. Well, gosh. Scared to stay and scared to leave. I don't know. how when you have fear in you, I mean, that your cortisol is pumping, you're constantly on pins and needles, you never get a good night's sleep because you never know when they're going to burst out in rage. We had a contract on a new house. We were moving, and I was sleeping, and I was talking in my sleep. I was talking to coworkers, and he actually punched me in my stomach. And he said, why are you dreaming about work? You should be dreaming about our new house. So I was like, I can't help what I'm dreaming about, But he had a whole host of other issues. Like I did my best not to sleep in the same bed. Like he would mostly sleep on the couch, and he had a strong addiction to pornography. So when we had our youngest, the youngest didn't have a bedroom. We ran out of bedrooms in our house, so I would let him sleep in my bed, and that was my excuse to make sure he wouldn't come and bother me during the last couple years of the marriage. But I mean, it was just very, very ugly. Fear, yeah, I know all about fear. It drives you mad because when you start to think of liberating yourself, you're afraid that your thoughts will be revealed, and that any ideation of freedom, that plan is foiled. So, I mean, that fear is very real. It's very unhealthy. I became very drained. I was pasty looking. I lost my color. You end up so worried to prevent an outburst. For me, he would always say, are you cheating on me? You're sleeping with your boss and your coworkers and all this garbage. So to compensate for that, I would look less and less attractive, if you will, going to work. For example, I'd wear big granny panties. I mean, who the heck is looking at my underwear? But this is the kind of craziness that took over my household. So I would wear big, oversized clothes. And this is just, and even like before I left for work, I'd put a bunch of hairspray on, and he would come up and like slowly mess up my hair. So now I have a bunch of hairspray in, and it's messed up. I'm running late, and I have to leave. So now I know I have to look like that. And so it was intentional, making sure I look bad, and then he would just reinforce it.
Oh, you left me speechless. So I'm going to have to ask you, why don't you continue on with what you were talking about in the last segment?
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where did I leave off? We left. Yeah. So the arrest was made, and we started over. I promised the kids that I would never go back. I owe it to them to not go back. And so I'm not even the hero of the story. My daughter is, because if it wasn't for her, I'm pretty certain that I would have been dead by his hands. I mean, I remember one incident. These explosions come out of nowhere. So it's not like they were instigated. It's not like I came home from work looking for a fight. That's not my nature. Because a lot of people just really, they don't understand the dynamics. And people who are just plain ignorant will say, she must like it. She must have done something to deserve it. And I mean, this is what I think they're calling the rape culture. They're giving excuses to why it happens instead of holding the perpetrator accountable. And so, I never wanted it. Coming home in fear every day, just a horrible thing to do. What else? So we started over, we moved to a new house, and then I was at ground zero with my kids. They had no idea who I was. And so he thought I was going to take them back. He thought this was going to be another time like I left before, and that it would smooth over, and that I wouldn't tell. Well, he was dead wrong, because now I made this promise to the kids. So we moved to this house a couple miles away, and he was on the phone with our oldest child, who was 18 at the time. And he said, in fact, this was on my 40th birthday, and I was sitting on the back stoop, and he was on the phone with my oldest son. And he said, you tell Mom I know where she lives. But by that point, I was like, you know what? Everyone knows where I live, because I put it in the phone book. Yeah. I started to turn around, and I started to resist that fear and letting him intimidate me. Because when I had left before, each time he stalked me, he would go to my work, he would make himself visible in my driving route, he would follow me, and it was just It was horrible. So I was always nervous all the time, always looking behind my shoulder. So this last time, he told my oldest son on the phone, he goes, Mom slept with all my friends. Oh, my God. He gets off the phone, my son gets off the phone and tells me this. My son doesn't know who I am yet, so I'm worried that he actually might believe that. But I was so drained, I didn't have it in me to stand there and defend myself to my son. All I said is, oh my God, it's not true. But I'm wiped, I'm drained, and I just didn't feel right, because when you're in a situation like that, you are constantly on the defense stand, because they're constantly, it's partially called gaslighting, where they're constantly keeping you in the spotlight, on the defense stand, on the defense, saying, I didn't do this. But one of our conversations when I would get home from work, it was like a conversation A, B, or C. I'd come home. How was work? Fine. Did anything happen that I need to know about? No. Are you sure? Yeah. What do you swear on? Are you cheating on me? Are you sure? What do you swear on? Say that you swear that the kids will die if you're lying to me. I mean, this was extreme stuff, and it was daily. So it was like embedded into my daily lifestyle. And even when I called him out saying, wow, conversation A, he would get mad. But still, I'm letting him know I'm onto it. But, I remember once I said, you're brainwashing me, and he became enraged. And, and that taught me not to speak up anymore. So what's the worst of the two evils? But my son said to me, the truth will come out in the end, so don't worry about it. And really, in hindsight, that was the best advice ever given. But I was so concerned, just because I wanted them to know who I was. And I wished I could just hurry up and just let them know. Say, I'm your mom, I love you. I wasn't able to then, but I can now. I just wanted to say that, and I couldn't. They had to see it through experience together. Unfortunately now, it's been almost 7 years. And we have developed that relationship and that bond between our kids, and it's beautiful. It's awesome. It's beyond belief how wonderful it is. Our youngest was 4 when that split happened, so I kind of feel like he was saved. But for 5 years, the first 5 years, I was in horrible, horrible fear of my husband. Well, in that time we did get divorced, but I was terrified of him. And I knew, and he started to stalk me, and I chose this time to file a report, because I figured, actually what I did is I came home and I told my kids, I told my oldest son, he cornered me in a parking lot and gave me the finger, and I froze. I stared at him like a deer in the headlights. I froze. And I told my daughter, my son said, I wouldn't do anything. It wasn't really that big of a deal. I told my daughter, and she said, I think you should do something. So I slept on it, because I don't like making any rash decisions. And I slept on it, and I decided I'm going to tell his probation officer. Yeah, because you know what? If I don't do something, next time it's going to be worse. And that was a good call, because that kept him in his place, let him know, I mean business. Don't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm not giving in to this. And so I filed it, and that was the last stalking thing that he did. So that was a beautiful thing. Learning to start to stand up for myself was very difficult. I guess that was my downfall the entire time, because when I tried, I'd get beaten. So about a year has passed now since the split. I no longer talk to him on the phone. I finally severed all communications. But our youngest was 4 years old. So I just gave up. I didn't ask for child support because I was afraid, and he had trained me that anybody who asks for child support doesn't deserve it. If they want to be single, then it's up to them to take care of their kids. That was what was burned into my brain. So I didn't ask for child support. And I allowed every weekend visitation through his brother. Him and his brother had a falling out, so we went to his sister. Well, him and his sister had a falling out. He had a falling out with everybody. He's just a pessimistic, negative person. So for all of those 5 years, I would run all over his parents, the brother, sister, whoever, to arrange so that he could see his son. I did not want to be the person to rip our son from his arms and you can't see him anymore. However, our son didn't want to see his father. And so my son and I kind of had this almost battle where I was trying to convince him to see his father because it was the right thing to do. And I would use other tactics saying, you have to see your dad or I'm going to go to jail. And this was all out of fear. So I was doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. Finally, just a little over a year ago, our son, who was then 9 or 10, he had a meltdown. He was having headaches, he was having stomach aches, he was having problems, and he said, you don't understand. And he's in tears. He says, he drinks all the time, he passes out, there's piles of empties all over the place, he hits me, he swears at me, he's calling me names, he asks about you. And so, again, I'm not the hero. Again, my child made me reach deep down and have to stand up. So I couldn't let that go. I said, wow, I'm so sorry. And I gave him a big hug. And I went to the sheriff's department and I filed papers to get a modified visitation. And I asked for child support. So I'm still in court over that, but we are finally pulling ahead. And, he tried to use all kinds of manipulation techniques. He said, you're filling his head with stuff. Don't do that. And in court, the first day we went to court, we stood before the judge, and this is where you're supposed to say if you retain an attorney or not. And I said, Your Honor, I am here because we have 3 kids in common. He can't even tell you when any of their birthdays are. He has been abusive to the children and to me. The attorney said, well, this isn't the time to talk about that. And my ex-husband said, Your Honor, she's off her rocker.
Right.
Really? So, that just showed enough about that. So now he's pretty much buried his own hole. He refused to acknowledge, the alcohol problem. He was supposed to have an evaluation last year in October. For somehow he just managed to slither through, buy more time, and the courts have just keep on giving him chances. And in New York State, they say the courts want both parents to be involved in a child's life unless he's killed somebody.
Right.
Wow. So here he is, evidently abusive. We have, statements from our other children from when the split happened 7 years ago to the degree of the abuse that happened and just the way that he is. Doesn't matter. He hasn't killed anybody, too bad. But here's why it's good. This is where it is ending up. Any visitation will be now at a therapeutic clinical setting in the child, with the child as pretty much the star. So he can't do things like say, Mom, no one likes Mom, and what's Mom doing? Does Mom have a boyfriend? All these things that he would interrogate him over, he can't do that. That's abusive, and it has nothing to do with him. But now he hasn't even made an effort to make that happen. I did it right away. I went and did the intake, and he hadn't done anything, and he's not going to. I've learned so much about narcissism. Now, here's a great story. When I went back to court last year for my son, because child support and visitation are on 2 different floors in our court, they said, oh, they need you to go up to the other floor and sign something real quick, then come back down. Now, this is when I first had to see him in court, and I was scared to death. I trembled. I was feeling anxiety, almost a panic attack. And this is not something I normally do. I'm not a nervous or panicky kind of a person. But seeing him, yeah. I mean, he had raped me and laughed. He told me I was pretty when I cried after he sodomized me. This is a sick man. So I go to the elevator by myself, and just like a minute later, he strode over there too. So I was like, oh no, oh my God. And I didn't turn around. He was like kitty corner behind me. And I was just waiting for that elevator door to open. And I was waiting to see if he was going to say anything. And he did. And this is what he said. He said, I seen pictures of you with other men on the internet. I have those pictures. The elevator door opens, I get in, and it closes. He doesn't get in behind me. And I was like, woo, is that it? Oh my God, that's awesome! Now, the reason reason why that's awesome is because I work in the promotions field for a living. So I am out and about. This is what I do. So I'm very conscious of what I post online. There's nothing online that I wouldn't want my own children to see. So I'm very mindful. So that's why it's okay. If I was out, and I was doing bad things like being drunk in public or, looking all sloppy, that'd be another story. But that's not it. So I was like, wow, is that all you got? That's wonderful. And so at that moment, I had a power shift. I took my power from him and gave it back to me. And since that point, it's only been about a year and a half. But now my fear is gone. I've overcome that, and I'm in charge of me now. Best thing that's happened ever.
I love it.
Woo!
Yeah, obviously you love it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Suzanne, I'm glad you ended with that story. We're not finished with the interview yet, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back after this last commercial break. Hold on. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Candy Leonard, author of Beatleness, How the Beatles and Their Fans Remade the World. And you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with Kirk Spencer.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ Phone. We are providers of junior iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals and companies. Have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me Amy Young mailbox emy@jsjphone.com or by phone 0086 134 18696 by Skype emy.yang2012.
Yes, honey. This is Marlo Wright of mbymarlo.com, and you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, and welcome back. Again, my guest today is Suzanne Perry. We were just talking on the break. That's why I just kind of stuttered there when I came back. We're going to ask Suzanne to wrap it up at this point, but I want to ask Suzanne to, from her own words, she has a lot of experiences. She's got, as you've heard for the past 3 segments, wonderful personality. She's learned how to take a defeatist attitude and come right back and go, yes, it's me. You heard that just before the break, even with the woo. So, yes, she has a very positive message to give out to people. So I'm going to ask Suzanne, what do you have to give to people? What do you have to tell people that are in an abusive relationship? And we're just using abusive as an all-encompassing word here, whether it's emotional or physical, or even we were talking about before the show started, the financial, whatever. What do you have, or what do you suggest for these people that are doing or having these experiences, even if they suspect they're in it?
We definitely need everybody to know that there is nothing under this sky that warrants you to be mistreated. Nothing at all. There is nothing that warrants abuse. So if you are being mistreated, if you are being belittled, put down, if you're being hit, if somebody is taking your paycheck, if they're telling you you'll never amount to anything, these are all signs of a potentially deadly relationship, because these things escalate. So don't dismiss it. if somebody actually hits you, they're going to hit you again. There's no such thing as an accidental hit, no matter what they tell you. I definitely want everyone to know that there is a lot of help out there. There's a lot of resources, good ones out there, and there is hope. If anything else, I want to be kind of like the Statue of Liberty. I want to hold up a lantern, to light the way for all of the people who are in the fog, not knowing if they're in an abusive relationship or not. So if you have any question at all, guess what? There's thousands of other people who have that same question. So send me your questions. I have a YouTube channel, and I answer questions using video. And I'm not going to name you. So I'm not going to send, the police to your house or anything. This is all for information purposes. We're saving lives. Sharing these videos, helping people to recognize warning signs, is preventing them from falling into the pit of abuse that I did. And it's preventing you from potentially getting killed. This is saving lives. It's important stuff. So definitely have confidence in yourself. Have self-respect. And if you are in an abusive relationship and you get out of it, take some time to reconnect with yourself. Because the greatest problem that happens is we jump into the arms of another abuser. Don't do that. We want to reconnect with ourselves, learn to love and respect ourselves before we start to turn outside.
Wonderful. You just say that too quickly, though.
Sorry.
That's okay. Why don't you give your website address and how people can contact you?
Alrighty. You can find me at Suzanne-Perry.com. The nonprofit is loveshouldn'thurt.tv. And you can find our YouTube channel right on the homepage there.
Indeed you can. I've already got them up here. Suzanne, you ended with a woohoo in the last segment, but let's... Yeah, I love that. Anything else that you would like to share with us? We have a few more minutes to go, so I'm going to just turn over the microphone to you and just let you run with it for roughly 10 minutes.
Okay. Indicators, we're wondering what are some of the warning signs. That's a good one. Extreme jealousy. If your partner is really, really jealous, don't let them say, I'm jealous because I love you, because that's not true. They're jealous because they're insecure. So don't take jealousy as an okay trait. It's bad. You don't want somebody who is so insecure with themselves that they're going to attack you and ask you to account for every minute of your time, every penny of your paycheck. You don't want that. A healthy relationship is one that each party compliments each other and gives a hand up to each other when the other one is down. You're there kind of like a checks and balances, not where one has to domineer and control the other one. That's where things get ugly.
Can I stop? Can I pause you for a second? Because I actually want to ask you something. I did a little counseling on this kind of stuff a long time ago, just being a holistic therapist, but not by far nothing like what you're doing. I used to run into the word of jealousy, because you just mentioned it. And jealousy, the way that I defined it, jealousy is fine. Possession, or person that thinks they own you, is where the problem comes in. And then I'm going to define this. Jealousy, at least in the healthy sense, is you're spending just a little bit too much time talking to your mom. Every time you come home, you're on the phone with your mom, or from a man's point of view. Or a woman's point of view, you're spending too much time with your guy, your buddies, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you're spending more time with them than you do with me. How about let's just balance this out? That is a healthy jealousy. In other words, I'm jealous of your time that you're spending with somebody else when you could be spending more of that time with me. Instead of going up and saying, as you say it many times through this interview, you're talking to this person, and I don't like you talking to your parents, and I don't want you to be with these people, and he doesn't even know who those people are, so on and so forth. That's more of a possessive way of doing life. Your comments?
Good call. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I would supplement that as far as the jealousy goes, and it goes right with that possessiveness. Possessiveness is somebody, if your partner's going through your phone and going through your Facebook and your social media more than you are, that's a red flag. Yeah.
That's possession.
Right. If you can't have, your things that you had before this relationship, a lot of times, somebody just told me this the other day too, old pictures, memories, things that were moments for you, if they can't live with you having those things and they have to destroy them, that's a red flag.
Well, destroying your stuff?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Somebody recently I was talking to, and she had a friend of an old boyfriend, and it wasn't a big deal because they were like little, younger, like teens or something, and the guy just like flew off the handle. How dare you? You can't have that. And he tore it up. And apparently it was at an event that had some sentimental meaning and stuff like that. Things that bring you joy. If they want to destroy the things that bring you joy, I have some friends who were painters. They would take the painting stuff and just throw it away or tear up or destroy or burn the paintings. I have a good friend who I'm referring to. She ended up creating a studio in her closet. And that is how she was, in her closet. She made a little studio in her closet. So when she had moments to herself, she would go in there and she would express her feelings through painting. And actually, she's a success story because she shows her paintings when she does her presentations now, and they used to be full of blacks and browns, and now they're full of yellows and greens, and it's just awesome to see people transition from, being owned and controlled and walking on pins and needles to a life where you are in charge of yourself. It's just it's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful. But I interrupted you to ask you the question about the jealousy versus
possessiveness.
Possessiveness. So where did you leave off with that? I'm sorry.
Well, I agree. I mean, I don't really look at that as a question. It's kind of like a supplementary comment, which I would agree with. Just people have different definitions of jealousy, and that's going to vary by different personality styles.
Yeah.
And you do it. You go with your gut. I used to fight against my gut instinct all the time. And even when I meet people today, sometimes I don't feel right about them, and I give them the benefit of the doubt, and then I end up getting screwed over. So I've learned to trust my intuition 100%. I always do now, and it's a good thing. So you have to learn to trust yourself.
Yeah, trusting yourself, especially in this day and age, and you said it at the beginning, it's just people they question themselves, but in a negative way, and even my mother, who was a psychiatric nurse, used to go around and says, you got this problem. There's a drug for that. And it's just, this is our society these days. You said it earlier in the broadcast. It's people who are they're on medication for this and they're on medication for that, and they're trying to balance out this problem because that problem was caused by that drug. And
right.
I mean, I grew up with a woman. She was one beautiful woman. I mean, talking her personality and character. I kind of adopted her as my mom, and but her problem wasn't psychiatric. She had health problems that basically what I knew at that time was related to arthritis. Mm-hmm. And she had one of those, I don't know if people probably don't know what I'm talking about. It's like one of these little cosmetic cases that women used to carry around back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it was just a little box, but it looks like a little chest. And this thing was loaded with prescription medicines. And she was bedridden. So she had, just as we were talking about, she had medicine for this problem, for that problem, and the medicine for this to counteract that problem that was caused by that drug. And it was, oh, God. And I just could not figure out how she could be such a wonderful person with all these drugs running through her. But nowadays, schools are actually giving out, or I don't know if they give them out, but they're prescribing drugs or telling you to go to a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, psychiatrist. And this is stuff that I read about, and you go into a psychiatrist, you talk to them for 10 minutes, and they've already handed you a prescription. Here, take that.
Right.
And they don't know the problem.
Yeah, it's horrible. I had chest pains, and I have a horrible family history. Both my parents had heart attacks. My mom was fatal, but my dad lived. So when I was feeling pains in my chest, I was like, oh, I'm getting checked right away. I went in, they gave me an EKG, and they wrote me a script for one of them really powerful addictive drugs. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want to mask the pain. I want to know what the heck's causing it.
Yeah.
I tore it up. I mean, I could have gotten those and sold them on the street. You know, it's just, they're way too easy to just hand out a prescription for everything. You're so right.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say this on air because I want to say it, so I'm going to do it. We're over time anyway, so who cares? But no, just kidding. But what was it? Back in 2005, I had a minor stroke. And it was a blood clot that lodged behind my right eye. And I didn't know what was going on. The short story of it is, I cleaned out my system thinking I had too much of the commercialized foods, prepackaged foods, preservatives like crazy. So I'm thinking, my body doesn't like it. So I cleaned out my system over a weekend. Didn't help. Not in the least. So I was living in Arizona at the time, and I went to an urgent care because clinics weren't open on a Sunday. So went there. General practitioner says, I think you have a detached retina. I went, don't think so, but okay, fine. Here, I want you to go see an eye specialist. Fine. So I called my insurance company on the following Monday, and they said, you can't go there because we're not covered. We don't cover that clinic, but we'll send you there. It was a better clinic. Anyway, it was the University of Arizona, and this guy I went to see was an eye surgeon. He's also a teacher, so yeah, respectable guy. And he did that, and he says, no, you had a stroke. There's a blood clot behind your eye. Only thing is, we can't give you any drugs for it. There isn't any drugs for that. I like this guy already. So he says, you're at a 50% chance of getting better or just staying the same. Chances are you won't get any worse. So I said, fine. I went home. Me, holistic therapist, I did some things. He said he wanted to see me in 3 months. I did my practice, or did the things that I know to do, came back 3 months later. He checked my eyes. He says, your eyes are back to 20/20.
Wow.
And he asked what I did, and I told him, and he was going to do a study on it on their next academy. They meet every year, and they said they're going to do a case study on it. So,
wow, good for you.
Yeah, so basically, and I'm going to give this as a suggestion, you can find all sorts of material in books and in on the internet now. Only problem with the internet is you're going to always find somebody that's saying, yeah, this will work, and they're going to find somebody, no, that doesn't work, and that's really dangerous. You have to be picky about it. So it's just like as we do this on the Facebook, people are always putting up newspaper articles about something that's really bad, and if you go look at the newspaper itself, and they have an about section or about page on the thing, they'll tell you, no, this isn't true, this is satire.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that a few times,
yeah, and people are, I'm believing this is real. No, it's not. It's satire. It's fiction. So check your sources. It's difficult, maybe, but what is the outcome? What's the best way to take care of your life, the life of your children, the ones you love, everything along that line? Stop giving up as you're hearing from Suzanne, stop giving up your abilities to be free and to be the individual you were born to be. This is what Suzanne's talking about throughout this whole interview. And I'm starting to preach, so I'm going to leave you to say, do you have any final words before I have to do my notes to go?
I just want to thank you for having me, and please send me questions. The email address is info@loveshouldn'thurt.tv, and I will answer every question in the form of a video.
Wonderful. And before you go, let me give you the usual little notes. You can listen to this program and all of our previous programs and those to follow on iTunes, Stitcher, podcast.com, RSS feed, and on YouTube. We have 5 different ways you can listen to the show. All of the media players that you choose are computer and smartphone friendly, which means you can listen on the go or you can listen at your computer. And according to Stitcher.com, you can actually listen to it on your new car radio. All episodes are free. We plan to keep it that way. And you can subscribe to each one of the media players that you choose. And we also ask that you follow us on the website. We're also on Twitter and on Facebook, K-Wave 6 Radio. We ask that you also support our advertisers. If you missed any of their advertisements, please go to our advertisers page and just click on the thumbnail pictures and it will take you directly to our website. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, please send us a message at info@kwave6radio.tk, and the 6 is the number 6, not the spelling of it, so it's info@kwave6radio.tk. Thank you once again, Suzanne, for being here, and I do look forward to having you back again in the near future, not distant.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Take care and always be well.
Thank you for being part of our audience. For more information about K-Wave 6 Radio and the services we offer, go to www.kwave6radio.tk. Have a wonderful day.